the king know that the family has arrived.
Now at 11, teachers rally in Kentucky's capital determined to teach lawmakers a lesson.
This is not an easy task. It isn't. It's why it has been ignored for decades. It's why people have kicked this down the road and kicked it down the road. It's easier to ignore it, to lie to people and tell them it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay if we don't fix the system.
Is it the governor's bill, or is it the Senate Bill 1, or is it the sewage bill? Which, the sewage bill, is that what we'd like to discuss? Okay, the sewage bill. That says a lot, doesn't it?
151 to me is a problematic bill, but it is a symptom of a larger problem.
Salaries in Kentucky, gosh, for public school teachers, they have been flat for a decade. We haven't even seen significant increases for probably 20 years.
The fact is, Kentucky has had the 6th lowest wage growth out of anywhere in the country, which means our people aren't making any more than they did 10 years ago, but all their bills are higher.
Pew came out with a study. They looked at all the pension plans in America. They looked at every state, and they said we are one downturn in the markets away from 2 state systems failing, and we were one of them. And that's in light of this bill that we just passed.
And this is not a hole we come out of quickly. This is a hole that was dug over the last 25 years. It's going to take 30 years to get out of that. But we do have a path forward now.
Well, if you look at what really came out of 151, by the time they chiseled it down, it doesn't hurt me that much. It's going to mess up some sick days that I was going to use towards the end. If it all stopped there, that would be fine, but I know it doesn't stop there. And they're going to come back in the next session and they're going to try to take away some more things, even from teachers who are retired right now.
The only thing we did in Senate Bill 151 was that no longer can teachers, after a date certain, accumulate their sick days and then use those towards enhancing their last year's salary. That was something that the teachers all liked, and they didn't really want to give it up, although at the last minute they did say they were in favor of it.
I'm not wild about freezing and capping sick days, but on one hand, a lot of colleagues may disagree with me. I do understand that something had to be done. I mean, you're talking billions of dollars in debt. Something had to be done, and this could get me hit, but I do appreciate the Republican Party leadership trying to do something to fix it, even though I don't necessarily agree with their solutions.
And it does a lot of things that I think people will deem positive. If you want to talk about, there's multiple systems. You can't just talk about one. For the KTRS system, the teacher system, it starts a new plan, what's called a hybrid cash balance.
However, it defines their contribution. It does not guarantee them certain benefits after they leave. And so since salaries have not kept pace with even the cost of living for at least a decade, we've lost the only other carrot for attracting the best and brightest into our field.
So the new teachers coming in, will they have a disappointing situation in their interview when they find out that there is not a pension system of what we call defined benefits? Now, they will be locked into something called the hybrid cash balance. We know them as 401ks. Theirs will be a 401a. They will be ultimately up to themselves to do their own personal savings of different things.
We know we're already struggling to get teachers to come into the teaching field. This bill changing from a defined benefit to now a defined, what they're calling a cash balance hybrid, guarantees no growth. It guarantees 0% growth.
We'll define how much you put in, but we're not going to promise anything on the other end. Well, that's ridiculous. A glorified 401k and so on and so forth.
You need to make incremental changes, incremental contributions, and by the time you get to the retirement end, it's a large amount of money.
Because we've stopped digging the hole, we're going to pay as you go, and now we can set it up just like your home mortgage. Just like when you buy a house and you have a mortgage, you know it's going to be for 30 years and you know what your payment's going to be. Now we can do the same thing in the Senate with the retirement programs because of Senate Bill 151.
I understand the government can't spend more money than it takes in. I mean, economics tells me that. But that's not what government's about. In a culture and a society as advanced as us, we have the resources to make sure everyone has the things they need, at least to an acceptable level. Public education is so important to reach out to students just like myself who are in poverty and help them come out of poverty and become tax-paying citizens. That's really our goal. And the governor wants to privatize everything because he's of the mindset that private industry can do everything better.
I think there are people who genuinely believe somehow this takes something away from them. It's important for people to understand if you're a current teacher or a retired teacher or a state worker of any other kind, Senate Bill 151 takes nothing away from you. If you're retired, it makes zero change.
But it did, in my opinion, damage future teachers that will no longer be in a defined benefit plan and will have to provide for their own savings with some small match from the state and the local system.
If I thought it was going to damage the public education system, I wouldn't have voted for it. I don't think it's going to damage it. I think it does several things that I think are going to attract young people into the teaching profession.
The new system, new hires, after this takes effect, if, and we hope not, if it takes effect, new hires will have a worse system than all the surrounding states. So let's use some logic here, right? Where are they going to go? More than likely, they're going to go to Indiana and Tennessee. And I think the governor and Bam Carney, who else? Senator Thayer, they love to talk about how, well, we have better benefits than anyone else. Well, you've changed that now.
Here's the thing. Teachers, again, if you look on it on a pay-adjusted standpoint based on cost of living, we pay higher than all but 6 other states in the United States of America. This idea that we're going to lose out to states near us, well, they all pay less. If someone wants to leave us on principle and go work for less money somewhere else, they could do that. But here's the thing. Nobody that I know enters the teaching profession for the money. They don't.
But you have to have something to dangle in front of a college kid, a talented college kid, that would make them consider going into this field that is extraordinarily difficult and stressful.
I honestly feel we have a younger generation that we give, and there's no understanding that not everything is for free. We can't keep surviving on, well, here's a program here, here's a program here. We've got to cut programs.
And that's bad enough because that shows me that you don't value what public school teachers do. That's not even talking about future teachers. I have students who sit in this classroom who say, I want to be a teacher. And I used to be so excited. And I've had plenty of former students who teach with me now here, and I'm so glad to have them. And I can't look them in the eye right now and say, yes, come back and do this. Because it's not going to be worth it to them. One, they're not going to make a whole lot of money. They could go into the private sector and do much better, and that's fine. But the fact that the state's not going to take care of them. How can I encourage you to come here and teach when I know it's not going to turn out well?
This new pension system basically, in my opinion, is going to make it terribly difficult to get the most talented, to get the most high quality of teacher that we would like to have into the classroom in the future.
And so students will just get a wildly inconsistent level of education. I think you'll see the quality of public education drastically reduced.
I'm terrified. I really am. I mean, I'm a dad, and I want someone in there who is as compassionate and, I hope, caring as I am with my students.
So this is incredibly harmful to new teachers. Now, if we get this bill thrown out in its entirety, then those new teachers will receive that full inviolable contract, that guaranteed retirement that I think they deserve.
If you watch the subcommittee video on the pension coming out into the sewer bill, there were several laws broken.
But what happened next is very disturbing from the point of democracy. So it was on the third or fourth last day of the General Assembly of their working days, and they were in the House chambers, and they took a recess and announced a previously unannounced, unpublicized meeting of one of their committees. And instead of having that committee meeting in the hearing rooms where all the public could come and participate, they had it in this little conference room off to the side of chambers. And when they went over there, they said the room's too small, meaning the public can't come in, including the hundreds of teachers that were outside just in case something like this happened. In that room, an 11-page sewage bill became a 291-page pension bill.
When the bill was passed out, the 291 pages, the pages were still warm. 291 pages that no one had seen whatsoever.
Never got to see the financials, never really got to look at the bill until we were actually in a discussion on the Senate floor to debate it. Normally we have a 24-hour rule where you get to look at everything and then we'll vote it at least the next day. It was almost vote for it, trust us, we'll find out what's in it later. And that is not a good way to pass the bill.
As the proceedings continued, I got up and objected basically to the bill. He hit his gavel and ruled me out of order, and that's when I made the comment. I said, no, sir, you're the one that's out of order. You're breaking the law.
Because the time frame we had left and the process, that's the way the process had to work. Now, would I have chosen maybe some other bill that didn't say a sewage bill on it? Would probably have been better. But that's the only bill that had 2 readings, and it passed the Senate and was in the House, and could then easily be moved back over to the Senate in the 2-day time period we have left and get something done. Because, quite frankly, you know, the pension system was in terrible shape.
And we absolutely have to do something about that. But I think we can all agree that what we do has to be legal.
If the way we read bills and amend bills is wrong, then there's a lot of state government that is invalidly constituted, including much of the pension systems as they currently exist.
It was voted out of the committee, it was voted through the legislature, and all of this, I think it's important to know, was done in one afternoon. It was voted out of committee, to the House floor, to the Senate, to the governor's desk in one afternoon.
Now, which would render any bill, regardless of topic, unconstitutional. This is not how government is supposed to work.
I think people would want to think long and hard about what they're saying, because if this is truly, they're saying this process is unconstitutional, there will be a lot of legislative acts that will impact a lot of people that would be deemed unconstitutional, even though the courts have looked at this and no one has raised this for 50 years.
It's not unconstitutional. It's the way the process works and what the law allows for.
The KEA itself has said that no change was made that's in violation of the inviolable contract. That's from the General Counsel of the KEA itself. They don't even think that there was an issue. The only person who does is the Attorney General.
And it's also unconstitutional in that it violates the contractual rights of active state, city, county workers, teachers, and a government of the people should have listened to them. But because it didn't, I filed this lawsuit, and I'm honored to be their voice in court.
I mean, like almost everything that he speaks about, the Attorney General is wrong. This is a political stunt. He'll lose in the end.
I don't know. I think it's got a 50-50 chance of being struck down in the first court process that it goes through.
It's kind of like the Korean War. I think we fought to a draw. We did come away with some concessions, and our hopes for the pension system are now with Attorney General Beshear and his lawsuit.
The teachers give you a good earful of what they have on their minds, and so do the superintendents. And I'm always glad to sit down and talk to them. While I had initially opposed the plan back in September, I think I reaffirmed my thoughts by going out and meeting and talking to them.
So not only coming to Frankfort, Kentucky was important, but having those forums, those community meetings with local legislators, face-to-face, eyeball to eyeball, and basically rallying them to be against this bill. And that if they were not going to be for them, they basically put it in the sand. Either you're for us or you're against us. And if you're going to be against us, we're going to remember in November.
Move cautiously. This is not a dictatorship. These people can vote you out when they feel like you've lost their trust. And in some cases, they probably should.
And we'll continue to fight next year if need be, and until the governors run out on a rail back to New Hampshire. Yeah, New Hampshire. And New Hampshire can have him. So
you have to act professional. And there are other professional ways of getting your views rather than protesting sometimes.
The people were here 1 week protesting against 2 bills in particular. They were booing and hissing because the KEA told them to. I vetoed both of those bills, in essence giving these people that were protesting exactly what they said they wanted. 5 days later, they were back asking for the exact opposite.
The teachers did not go to Frankfurt and close schools for more money in their own pocket. They went for money to educate the kids. That's what a lot of people don't understand.
The thousands of teachers, the thousands of public employees who came to Frankfort, Kentucky, who lobbied on behalf of their profession. I want to thank them for that. That is what true democracy is all about.
And as we were going to Frankfurt, these people became rock stars to us because we were down there every day. So we'd see Senator McGarvey go by, and everyone would cheer for him. Rocky would stick his head out from around the curve, and it was like Bruce Springsteen showed up, and everyone would cheer and yell for him because they were really helping the teachers out.
There's nothing wrong with voicing your opinion like teachers did. You know, as far as comments that the governor may have made or the governor did make, you know, maybe they were taken out of context, maybe they weren't. That's for them to decide.
His comment about the day that teachers took off and there was a child that may have been abused or whatever. You know, when we have days off, kids can get into mischief.
I mean, what's he think happens when you call school off at 6:30 because it's a snow day? Is it our fault too?
For the 99 successes he's had, he's going to be remembered by 1 utterance or 2 utterances or 3 utterances that will be perceived as failures in public relations. And so, are they defensible? No, they're not. But those overshadow, and they will overshadow, many great successes.
I've put more money into the pension system than the previous governor did in 8 years. I've been the governor for 2.5 years. I've put 2 budgets in. Those 2 budgets have funded more money to the pension system than the previous governor did in 4 budgets over an 8-year period.
I'm the governor that's funded it. You know, I'm the greatest governor in the history of Kentucky as far as the pension goes. If you don't read any George Orwell, yeah, you'll agree wholeheartedly with that.
My teachers invested in me, prepared me for the world, and I owe them so much. And so it's hurt me to watch them be called names. Our governor has called them disgusting, has suggested that they are ignorant, has called them thugs, and then has tried to depict them as union members, and that's just wrong.
I used to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm telling you, the whole teacher rape comment thing, the gloves came off.
I think, wow, we all make mistakes on what we say and go, oh, why did I say that? And I'm sure in private he probably did that.
He has come from the business sector. He's perceived to be the most powerful man, individual, because he sits in the institution of the governor's seat. And I've said to him on many occasions, his words are powerful, and he needs to be careful how he uses them.
And I think the message of what he wanted to get across just didn't come out how it should have. And yeah, the apologies help, but it's kind of like, oops, you did say it. You can't take it back.
The governor's going to think what he wants to think. I'm at the point where, I don't care what he thinks.
He doesn't like public education. He doesn't like teachers. And so now I don't think I like him.
I don't have anything to say about Bevin.
The message that I would want every teacher to take away is that you are appreciated, more than some would have you believe, because people have tried to whip up dissent because it's politically opportunistic of them to do so. But as the father of 9 children, a father who has children in the private schools and children in the public schools, as somebody who has had 3 generations of my immediate family, grandmother, father, siblings, as public school teachers, I understand how thankless at times the job can be.
What I tell those teachers, though, stick with us. They had an amazing voice during this General Assembly. 12,000 strong one day, 7,000 strong another. It was truly inspiring.
If anything came out of this that is really good, is the fact that it brought a lot of attention to the impact of what state legislators and state policies do, how they work, and their impact on people.
I have never seen an energy like this across Kentucky in my entire political career. So there will be a telling come November, and teachers are going to have the ability, the education community is going to have the ability, public employees, and people of the general public, really to answer that question that you just asked. And that is, they will remember in November.
I think the teachers' voices will be heard in the election in November. I think there'll be a lot of changes.
If this governor gets reelected, I would be very surprised. If there's a state worker in this state who votes for Governor Bevin, I would like to sell this guy some real estate, because I don't know why on earth anyone who's employed by the state of Kentucky would vote to reelect Matt Bevin.
The people who voted to put more money into public education, K through 12, than has ever been put in, not only in absolute dollars, but in per pupil spending. The highest ever in the history of Kentucky has happened under this administration. That's what was just voted on by this legislature. What do they want to run against? Less money? Non-record levels? Not saving the pension system? Not funding the pension system also at record levels? We've put more money into the pension system than has ever been put in. So those who would remember in November and want to elect new people, what do they want the new people to do? Do less? Put less money in? Save the pension system less sincerely? I don't understand what they're angry about or working against.
I live in the Eastern Kentucky world. That's what I know. It's where I was born. It's where I work every day. It's what I see. And there's a lot of poverty here. There's not a lot of hope. Coal was our thing, and now coal's not our thing. So we're searching for something. Clearly, education is the way. This bill doesn't do a whole lot to build public education. So we're working backwards from my point of view.
If you use an analogy of a bucket that's leaking water, we've been pouring money, which is taxpayer money, into that bucket, but it's leaking out, going to pay benefits, but having paid benefits on promises made that we can't afford to back up. So people who preceded me, administrations of governors prior to this one, have made a lot of promises that frankly are not backed up by actuarial reality. There's no money to back up the promises. The promises sound good, they feel good, people like to hear them, people are happy to know, hey, I'm going to get that too. Excellent. But there has to be the ability to actually deliver on the promise.
We have a lot of issues in Frankfort that we need to deal with, but nothing's any more important than the pension, because there's a lot of teachers' jobs. Education is what will develop this state and the nation.
And education is the key. Upward mobility is a real thing, and public education can help students get there.
People often put more of their heart, more of their resources into these jobs than it would seem that they get back in return. What I would want people to know is how much personally I appreciate not only the education I received, but that which my children receive, and the fact that their children someday will also be educated by people who have pursued a very noble profession. And as the governor of Kentucky, I personally am grateful for what our educators put in to educating the next generation of Americans, and specifically the next generation of Kentuckians.